What's up, Facebook Live? Nice to see you all. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. As you're tuning in, I'd love to know, number one, where you're tuning in from. Number two, I'd love to know three things you're grateful for. Today, we're talking about something that's really interesting, which I've had to talk about to three different young gentlemen in the past 48 hours. So I figure I would throw it up here for anyone else who needs to hear this thought. The thought is really simple, is what is the current dream that's being marketed and sold right now via Hollywood, TV, movies, that kind of stuff, media sources. And so we're going to dive into that and talk about the generational things that have been sold over the generations, and then figure out how has this affected your vision or your goals or dreams of how you should be spending your life and time. Let's see. Hello from London. Nice to see you. Kenny, what's up? As you're tuning in, I'd love to know, number one, where you're tuning in from. Number two, I'd know three things you're grateful for. I'm going to jump over here, pull this up real quick, and hit share to get this out to a few more people. Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right. Click share, click here, share. Done. Easy peasy. And good to go. American in London, what's up? Greg, nice to see you. Welcome from San Jose, California. Again, as you're tuning in, love to know, number one, where you're tuning in from. Number two, love to know three things you're grateful for. Go ahead and throw it over there in the comments section. Love to hear from you all each day. Now, to start off with, I'd love to know what is your, in the comment section, I'd love to know what is your current goal or dream or vision that you're working on right now. So if there's one major, like the top of your hierarchy here, if there's one thing you're aiming for, one major thing, I don't care if it's in your personal life, your business life, but there's one major thing you're aiming for. I'd love to know, what is it? What are you trying to achieve? Now, I do see the number taken up, so I'd love to know, number one, where you're tuning in from. Number two, I'd love to know three things you're grateful for. And then the first question of this conversation here is, if there was one thing you were optimizing for in your life right now, what are you optimizing for? Now, Greg says he's optimizing for absolute freedom. Hey, cool thing to optimize for. I like it. You know, if there's one thing you're optimizing for, what are you optimizing for? Kenny says freedom of choice. Very nice. So we have absolute freedom, freedom of choice. And again, question, if there's one thing you're optimizing for right now in your life, what are you trying to optimize for? And I do see there's people, so I'm curious to know what everyone else is optimizing for. If there's one thing you're optimizing for right now in your life. Now, whatever that thing is you're optimizing for, let's see, Den says, I'm aiming for financial readiness and for this market to collapse. Okay. We have money. I think it's Asmeron. Azeram. Love. So optimizing for money, optimizing for love, optimizing for financial freedom, optimizing for freedom of choice, absolute freedom. There's one thing you're optimizing for. What are you optimizing for? Now, the second question, besides what you're optimizing for, the next question is, how do you know when it has been optimized? Meaning, when you've done it, you have the pinnacle of what it is you're working for, what will the result be? So, absolute freedom to do what? You know, what was the other one? Freedom of choice. Which choices are you trying to seek freedom in? Financial freedom. What's the number that represents that? You know, that could be total amount in capital. That could be leveraged income. But what's the number that represents the result there? We have optimizing for money. Great. How much money? What amount for what? Optimizing for love. Okay, how do you know when you've gotten the love that you're looking for? What does that mean? So what I want to know is, if you're optimizing for this category, how do you know what's the definition of it's been optimized, meaning you've done it? That's the second piece of this question. Gary says 500,000 a year, 500,000 rupees. Ugandan shilling? What do you want? US dollars? Great British pounds? Kuwaiti dollars? They're worth 4 times a dollar. Den says, Miles, what's up, buddy? Nice to see you. 500,000 a year. Den says, financial freedom of having gold and silver. Okay. So how much gold and silver must you have to have financial freedom? Gary says in dollars. Fair enough. My number is to make 10,000 a month of passive free. The choice of freedom is 100,000 a month. Okay, fair enough. Melissa, nice to see you. And so the question is, number one, what are you optimizing for in your life? What's the number one thing you're trying to optimize for? Number two, how do you know when it's been optimized? Den says, silver and gold is the true money. I don't know. Those crypto guys would say that that's old school and you got to get in the crypto markets. 100,000 a month in personal income for the rest of my life. Okay. That's how you know it's been optimized. And so here's the big question. Who sold you this dream? Who sold you this concept? And you know, let me go backwards a little bit and let's think through this process. So I remember my wife and I, we were traveling, and when we were traveling, I think we were in Colombia. And in Colombia, I looked up at a billboard and I saw these really good looking people. And what was interesting is, as I looked at these really good looking people up on the billboard, I went, wow, they look similar to the people here, but they don't look exactly like the people here. That's weird. And it was like a makeup ad or a traveling ad or something. I go, that's really interesting, really interesting. And so I asked someone local, I said, hey, are those people up on that billboard, are they from here in Colombia? And they looked at them and said, no. And I said, well, where are they from? And they said, well, those people up there, they're from probably either Venezuela or Ecuador. Like, they're not from Colombia, though. I went, really? Why would a company choose to put a person to represent beauty on a makeup ad on a billboard in Colombia that's not from Colombia? What the hell are they doing? Why are they telling women that that's what beauty looks like, but they're purposefully choosing someone that's not from there to represent beauty? I said, that's really interesting. Why would they choose someone that's not from there to represent the thing that people are supposed to aspire to by purchasing their products? That's really fascinating. That's an interesting move. And just recently, we were in Chengdu, China. We ran into an editor of a major fashion magazine on that side of the world. We were just chatting it up. And I said, hey, I've got a crazy question. You used to edit a major fashion magazine. Do you purposefully choose models that aren't from the location but look similar enough that people might think they are to represent the ideals of beauty? And she's like, hey, I can't say we don't. I was like, does that mean you do? And she's like, well, you know, you can put 2 and 2 together. She wouldn't say. That's weird. And then I have friends. I have friends who are models in New York. They're long-term friends. And, you know, there's a young woman who's from Michigan who's a model for German calendars. And then I looked at the models they use in this country, and they're models from Europe and Central and South America and a bunch of other places. Now, Danielle's hitting on something which is interesting, to make it unattainable. So they're constantly showing you something that you're supposed to aspire to, but technically that bone structure isn't the way the bone structure here is made. So it's different. It's close, but different on purpose because you can't quite get it. They're going to keep moving it. So it's an interesting thought. And then I said, I wonder what, if you look at Hollywood or Bollywood or whatever major media outlet is advertising to you, I wonder if they do the same thing. That's really weird. So I thought about it and I said, well, thinking back, what was the dream that was being sold way back when? And I was trying to think back as far as I could kind of thumb through history and things that would make sense. And I was like, I remember when there was a dream being sold, and at a certain time in history, when there were major wars going on around the world, what was considered the aspirational thing you could aspire into in life? Meaning, if you were a good man, if you wanted to be a hero, what would you do with your life? What would you dedicate your life to, according to the media, if you wanted to become a good man in the world? Well, at the time of a wartime scenario, you would become a wartime hero. You'd sign up for the service and you'd show up and deliver your service to the country. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I said, what did that evolve into? Because eventually the major, large-scale worldwide wars kind of ended and they needed to market the next thing. So what did they market? And I'm trying to remember around that time, and I remember, baseball was huge in the U.S. All of a sudden it was like, wow, if you could become a ball player, that's where the magic's at. If you could be a ball player, like that's the dream, a ball player. And then for women, eventually, somewhere along the line, there was a lady named Marilyn Monroe, and it's like, oh my gosh, if you could become an actress and a movie star and a model, oh my goodness, ba-bam, like you've aspired. That's the thing to work towards, according to television media and all the sources. And then you fast forward, let's just get recent and say, in the 80s, what was the thing to be in the 80s? Like if you could be something in the 80s, or let's go back, 70s, 60s. I don't know, depending on your age and how much you remember history, if you could be in an 80s rock band, you were like the coolest fucking kid on earth. Are you joking? A rock band, the crazy ass hair, you could wear those crazy outfits. You could fucking have anything at that point in history if you were a rock star. That's a pretty crazy thing to be. And then you fast forward at, corollary, there's other paths being advertised and marketed. Somewhere along that line, if you work on Wall Street, if you worked at a major corporation, you fucking made it in life. You were the bee's knees. You were the coolest kid on the block if you could pull that off. Elaine says it was called the service back then too. You don't hear that anymore. Isn't that interesting? So fast forward. All of a sudden it's big business, Wall Street, CEOs, major stockbrokers. You could be a big deal if you could do these things. Fast forward. Eventually a rock star. What's the current day rock star? Is it still like people are trying to grow up and be rock stars nowadays? Or is there something else that someone's trying to aspire to in this kind of industry? Something to think about. And so all of a sudden a rock star maybe became a music artist or an R&B artist or a rap artist, a rapper. These things started to recreate themselves. Same dream, different form. Because you can only sell the dream for so long, and then all of a sudden you got to sell a new dream. Jeremy says, a dad bod. So here's the one. This is the current one. This is one of the current things, being an entrepreneur. That's the bee's knees. Fuck working for anybody else. Excuse the language. You don't want to work for anybody. You want to have your own business. You want to be an entrepreneur if you're going to be cool as shit nowadays. If you're in the tech space, it's not just having your own business. Screw that. You need to generate the next Airbnb, Facebook, whatever. You need to be the next Uber of something. Here's a crazy one. If you're an athlete, here's a big question. If you're an athlete right now, what's the sport of choice that's being marketed as the sport? The sport. What's the sport of choice right now if you're truly an athlete? The one everyone would want to aspire to based on media standards. Now think through this. Is it baseball? Baseball players have some of the longest careers, the least amount of injuries. Is baseball the sport that people are aspiring to right now? Young people? Some. I don't think that's the big thing they're selling right now. Based on music of pop culture and things that are blending through society and shaping young people's values, there's other sports that are even more popular than others. They have more injuries, they have more stuff going wrong, but basketball and football are more heavily pushed towards with certain parts of culture than, MMA is becoming popular. If you watch what's happening, and so the question becomes, what have you bought into marketing-wise? Right now, there's a corollary piece that's interesting. Being an entrepreneur. Now, there's another thread of that. Young kids right now, there's another thread, and tell me if anyone's picked up on this, where you want to become an influencer. What does an influencer do? Well, they have millions of people follow them, and then they influence them to buy shit, and they get paid from brands to influence people. Well, that's not new. That's been around a very long time. But back in the day, you had to be able to sing or dance or play a sport or do something. And nowadays, you just got to get crafty on internet marketing and get enough people to pay attention. And all of a sudden, there's influencers. And I'm not saying anything's wrong with any of these things. All these things are options. But here's my question. Based on what you're optimizing for, how have you bought in and been sold some of these concepts? Meaning, where in your brain, in your linear portion of history, where did you step back and go, wait a second, I'm going to consciously choose without anyone's reference points, without anyone's influence, I'm going to choose how I want to live my life and what I choose to do, regardless of what pop culture says is cool, regardless of what Hollywood is pitching us as the good idea, regardless of what everyone else is doing. You need to choose your path. When did you sit down and make that decision? Because a lot of you on here said you're optimizing for money. Okay. When did you decide that optimizing for money was the most important thing of your life? It's an interesting question. Who convinced you that was a good idea? Who did you hang out with that kept saying again and again and again? Now, Lucia says, I don't think it's possible to not be fully influenced. Well, unless you live in the cabin in the middle of freaking nowhere and have zero contact with other people, I agree with you. I'm just asking, how much have you been influenced? Meaning, if we had a scale from 100% no influence, your decision, and all the way influenced by someone else, where do you fall on this scale? Are you over in like the 1, 2, 3 section where it's 90% your choice and a little bit of someone else's influence? Or are you on the 12 out of 10 section where everything you're doing right now is based on outside influences telling you what's cool and what's not and pushing and pulling you throughout the process? So where are you on that scale? And another big question, where do you want to be on that scale? When you get to 80, 90, 120 years old, sitting in your rocking chair looking back at your life, do you want to think, oh shit, I spent 40-something years of my life completely influenced by media, pop culture, society, my parents, my friends, my community, and everyone around me? Or do you want to look back on your life and go, wow, there was a point where I was heavily influenced by a lot of people and stuff around me. But then there was a point where I realized what was going on. I stepped back and I said, you know what? I'm going to disconnect from a lot of crap right now. And I'm just going to make some choices. I'm going to listen to my heart. I'm going to find some space. I'm going to journal and throw down my thoughts. I'm going to really define who I am. And then I'm going to make a decision on the things that most, whatever your value is, light you up, make you the most money, allow you to travel, give you the freedom, whatever the thing is you're optimizing for. It's why we started there. Whatever vehicles allow me to experience the most of that, I'm going to choose those vehicles, which all these things are just vehicles to get you to what you're optimizing for, to help me get closer to what I'm really, truly trying to optimize for. Kenny says, I did when I was 18. Chased a career working backstage production. I agree. I had encouragement, shown the ability to ever consider it as a career. Interesting. depending on the areas of my life. In some areas, I'm heavily subconsciously influenced. In other areas, I'm aware I am. Interesting. So these are things to consider. Whose influence have you allowed to kind of seep into your process of choosing who, what, when, where, and how you live life? Whose influence have you soaked up over the time? Second, how much of this influence has played a role on how you've chosen to navigate this thing called life, and which vehicles you've chosen to help you get from point A to point B? And then number three, like, what is point B? What is that you're trying to optimize for? Because there's other things being optimized for and being influenced on young people right now. Imagine if your kid grew up watching the Catch Me Outside girl. If you don't know who she is, Google it. It's eye-opening. And your kid decided, hey, since that little girl's making so much money and she's so famous and powerful, I'm just going to do what she does. And all of a sudden you come home, your kid throws shit, pie in your face and goes, catch me outside, bro. And all of a sudden you're thinking, what the hell happened to my kid? And all of a sudden they've been influenced by someone who isn't the best influence, in my opinion, but what do I know on that? And all of a sudden, what happens? Do you allow them the power of choice? Do you challenge them to really, truly ask them what they're optimizing for and why they're choosing this role model? Do you help them find more options? Because whatever you do for your kid, when's the last time you sat down and did it for yourself? When's the last time you sat down and said, why am I allowing myself to get caught up emulating this thing that I'm seeing here? Is that really what I'm trying to get after? Jeremy says, these are really great questions. I found that influence have sparked an immense sense of insecurity in me, and I've become self-conscious to a fault. Very interesting. Grateful for my mom for doing better after surgery. Grateful for your continued insights and great for my life. Well, thanks, Fred. I used to get influenced by broke people, family and friends, but now I get influenced by someone who has a fruit in the tree. Okay? One thing to consider. If someone has a lot of money, does that mean they have other shit figured out? So one thing I've learned is, in the book Principles by Ray Dalio, he's a smart guy when it comes to money. He built himself from nothing to a, $14 billion personal net worth. He manages hundreds of billions in his hedge fund. He's probably a smart guy to learn about money from. Now, would you go to him to learn about health? Maybe. I don't know his health right now. I don't know what he's doing. But maybe not. One principle he threw in there was only consider someone to be a subject matter expert if they've done it 3 times, 3 separate times in different situations. They've repeatedly done it at least 3 times, and they can clearly and easily articulate how they did it and how you can do it in a repeatable fashion. So all of a sudden, that's a good filter. That's like, hey, that's a good thing to know. Have they done it at least 3 different times in 3 different occasions and situations and circumstances? And can they easily explain it in a way that they can replicate it and I can replicate it? Good filter. Lucia says, in wanting to emulate others gives a sense of connectedness of being the same. Yeah, it could. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, I'm just asking, when did you choose to emulate these people or those people, or to try this path or that path? It gets confusing when I know I'm capable of many things and I see so many options that could be a vehicle, but it's tough to choose one. Absolutely. And so, these are the questions for the day, things to consider. What's Hollywood selling right now? The other thing Hollywood's selling right now, but besides entrepreneurialism, being the next Zuckerberg or Airbnb guy or Uber guy or any of that stuff, or Glossier gal or any of those things, or what's the Beehive one? The Bumble lady. When's the last time you sat back and said, hey, what are they trying to influence? What are they trying to sell me right now? What's the cool thing to try to be in the world that people are selling? And it's a dream. At one time, you were supposed to be Joe DiMaggio or Marilyn Monroe. Another time in history, you're supposed to be Gordon Gekko. You're supposed to be powerful on Wall Street. Another time, now you're supposed to be, a guy in jeans and a hoodie who makes an app that changes the world. Another time in history, you're supposed to argue with your family continuously and get a lot of plastic surgery and influence the world through multimedia and social media. And it's like, these are things they're selling. And so you got to realize, what have you been buying? Because they can sell it to you all they want. If you don't buy it and you go, I'm going to go into something else, what have you been buying based on what they're selling? That's the other thought. Because they could sell the stuff at you all day long. And the only reason they keep pushing stuff forward, I remember there was an interview done with Ray J. I was at the Steve Harvey show and we were watching. And he was interviewing this young guy named Ray J. His older sister's name's Brandy. She's a really popular singer. And when he was on there, he's the kid who made the sex tape with Kim Kardashian. And it was interesting because they interviewed him and they said, tell me what's going on in your world. And he says, I learned something crazy. When he was in Hollywood, the crazier the stuff he did, like if he picked up a champagne bottle and chucked it in the face of a waiter, the next day the media would be there, people would be filming, people would be throwing gobs of money at him, hundreds of thousands of dollars for interviews and all kinds of stuff to get his attention. And he would be rewarded like crazy for doing dumb shit. But as soon as he tried to act like a normal human, like respect people, talk normal, do normal things, all of a sudden, no one gave a shit. They didn't care. They didn't want to talk to him. They're not going to give him any money. No one's interested in what he's doing. He's being normal. So literally, they were incentivizing chaos. Anytime he would do something totally batty, bam, everyone's throwing cash at him. They want his attention. They want him at their club. They're trying to get him on TV and all these things. And if you notice the trend, it's like, wow, that's what they were incentivizing. And then look at what happened to a whole group of young people. They saw crazy stuff like that and said, oh my gosh, that's how I get those kind of results. That's how I get attention. That's how I get famous. That's how I make money. And all of a sudden, you have all these 13-year-olds doing similar crazy stuff. You scratch your head going, wow, it was sold and a bunch of young people bought it. Elaine says, the have-it-all woman, the goal of the 80s and 90s. Family not as important as career. Totally true. Totally true. That was something that was sold to women. Be it all. Do everything. Now it's more about life balance or sequencing. Interesting. So it's a new dream. How do you balance it all? There was a young man I was talking to. He's 23 years old, just graduated from school. He was asking me probably 40 minutes ago, we were on the phone. He was saying, how do I balance my life? How do I choose how much time to spend with my friends and how much time to work on my startup idea I have? I said, dude, you at this stage of life and your business is brand new, it's going to take a ridiculous amount of time and life and energy. And I was like, trying to figure out how to perfectly balance things is going to drive you nuts. I said, why don't you work on integration? Why don't you go find 3 friends that have similar businesses, don't necessarily do business together, instead do business together. What does that mean? Go to the same place every day, meet up in a coffee shop, and each work on your own businesses. That way, nothing gets complicated. You don't hate each other or piss each other off. Instead, you just have community around you, so you're together. You hang out for 8 hours a day while working on your own businesses, and all of a sudden you have this amazing little community and a little tribe you built that all is doing good. You can share what's working, what's not. You can mastermind with each other. You can support each other, hold each other accountable. All kinds of stuff you can do there. And he's like, whoa. I was like, yeah, that means you get 8 hours of friendship and 8 hours of working at the same time every day. Pick who you want to hang out with and meet up with them and go do it. He's like, wow, George, smart. He's like, what about, and he kept coming up with concepts and we kept showing him how. He's like, what about learning? Like if I have a full-time job and I have a startup, where am I supposed to learn new things and read and grow? I said, why don't you pick a job that has life skills and business skills you want to learn, go get hired there, and then you have 8 hours of working and 8 hours of learning at the same time and practicing a new craft, a new skill set. He's like, whoa. This concept, integrate things together so you get multiple boxes checked off by doing one activity. Let's see. In the case of finding oneself when you're young and testing out boundaries in different tribes in order to belong. So this might help with that question. With age comes self-acceptance and truth. Absolutely. And so that process of trying these things and learning these things is helpful. The question is, some of you are very young, some of you are more seasoned in life. And so that question of when did you stop and consider what were you allowing yourself to be influenced by is important no matter what stage of life you're at, any position. Two, what level has it influenced you, 0 to 10, 10 being extremely, 0 not at all? And where do you ultimately want that to be? Do you want more freedom? Freedom to me is choice, meaning it's less being influenced by others and more choosing how, what, when, and where you're doing life instead of being influenced to this is right or that's right or this is better or that's worse. But that's just my version of freedom. It could be different. Someone else's version of freedom says, if you have multiple investment properties and $100,000 a month in income, that's true freedom. Maybe. Who taught you that? Where was that a good idea? Because I know people who have lots of investment properties and the dream of them sitting on a beach collecting checks and doing nothing is kind of a weird thing that people scratch their head, because when I know them, they work their asses off putting out fires and cleaning shit up. And you're like, oh, I'll just hire a property management company. And what's funny is they did, and then they got fucking pissed because they thought the person wasn't doing anything. So they fired them and did it themselves, and then they have shit all the time they got to deal with. So it's always really influential. It's always really interesting to watch people go through that situation of they get what they want only to realize it wasn't exactly what they thought it was. It's like the whole 4-hour work week. Make enough money that you can sit on the beach and do nothing. If you meet people who have that, they're bored out of their flipping mind trying to figure out what to do with themselves. It's not quite what it seemed. Now, go get it. Try it out. If you're still at that point of life where you're trying a bunch of new things, trying to figure out what's for you, try it all. See if you can pull it off. Prove to yourself what you're capable of. But at some point, stop and question who taught you that whatever you're doing now is the thing you should be doing. Who influenced you that that was a good idea? Was it 0 on the scale of influence and you came up with it yourself and it's your decision? Or have you been heavily influenced? And what do you want to do moving forward? That's all for today. I gotta get ready for yoga. Go stretch out with my wife. Hope this was interesting. If you found it useful or know someone who needs to hear this, please hit the share button and invite them to come check it out. I will be on tomorrow, roughly the same time. And have a great morning, evening, day, afternoon. See y'all soon.